The judge barely looked up as he delivered the verdict, his voice devoid of sympathy. You will continue paying the home mortgage, $1,000 in child support, and provide health insurance until your child turns 18. Should your child attend college, you will assume all associated expenses. Spousal support is set at $2,000 per month. Kurt D'Angelo sat motionless, his jaw clenched so tightly that his molars ached. The numbers rolled through his mind like a wrecking ball. Over $6,500 every month. For what? For a woman who had spent years stabbing him in the back, sleeping with multiple lawyers from her firm, and still walked away as the victim in the eyes of the court. Across the room, Lily sat poised, her expression perfectly measured, feigning humility as she accepted her victory. She didn't glance at Kurt, didn't acknowledge him at all. It was as if she had already erased him from her life. And then there was Regina, their daughter, the one person who still made this mess worth fighting through. She had spoken up, had told the judge she wanted to live with Kurt. And just like that, he had ignored her wishes, handing full custody to Lily as if Regina's voice didn't matter. Kurt had seen the look in his daughter's eyes when the ruling was made. Betrayal, confusion, loss. This wasn't about fairness. It was about power. And Lily had just won the first round. But Kurt wasn't the kind of man to lie down and accept defeat. He would follow the court's ruling to the letter. And Lily? She was about to find out what it felt like to regret every single decision she ever made. 30 days passed. The first payment was due. Kurt made arrangements. Regina's child support was deposited directly into her own account, ensuring that Lily never got her hands on a single cent of it. As for the spousal support, Lily had demanded her $2,000 in full, so she was going to get it. The armored truck pulled up to Lily's house early in the morning, just as she was stepping outside with a cup of overpriced coffee in her manicured hands. The moment the back doors of the truck swung open, revealing bags upon bags of loose change, she froze. 2 uniformed guards stepped out, carrying heavy sacks of coins, and began unloading them onto her pristine driveway. Lily's eyes widened in horror as the first bag burst open, spilling thousands of nickels and pennies onto the pavement. The sound of metal clinking and tumbling echoed through the quiet suburban street. She stormed forward, her robe billowing behind her. "What the hell is this?" she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. One of the guards handed her a receipt. $2,000. Spousal support. Lily's nostrils flared, her face turning a shade of red Kurt had never seen before. Across the street, leaning against the hood of his car, arms crossed, Kurt watched with a lazy smirk. Lily's gaze snapped to him. "You absolute bastard!" she shrieked, stepping onto the pile of loose change, her expensive heels sinking into the mess. Kurt took his time, lighting a cigarette before exhaling slowly. "Just following court orders, sweetheart." She shook with rage, her fingers curling into fists. "You can't do this. You have to pay me properly." Kurt shrugged. "Funny thing about that. Turns out, coins are legal tender." He gestured toward the growing mountain of change at her feet. "Enjoy counting." Lily's scream of rage was pure music to his ears. The best part? The weight of the coins cracked her imported stone tiles on the front porch. An unfortunate accident, of course. A few days later, Kurt was served with another court summons. Lily wasn't done. He expected her to whine, complain, and throw a tantrum, but this? She was trying to have him held in contempt of court for deliberate malice. He laughed as he read the paperwork. She really thought she could still play him. Fine. If she wanted a courtroom battle, he'd give her one. The hearing was scheduled for the following Wednesday. Kurt spent the week preparing, reviewing every financial document, every legal loophole. He had been careful. He had followed the ruling exactly as written. Regina, sensing the storm brewing, asked to meet him for lunch. She was furious. "She's trying to paint you as the villain," she muttered, stabbing at her salad with a fork. "She even met with some psychiatrist, and now she's twisting things to make you look bad." Kurt's grip on his coffee cup tightened. "What do you mean?" he asked carefully. "She told the judge that I was too attached to you," Regina said bitterly. "Like it's some kind of problem." A dark, cold feeling settled in his gut. Lily had gone too far this time. This wasn't just about money anymore. She was trying to destroy him completely. The morning of the hearing, Kurt arrived at the courthouse with his lawyer. Lily and her attorney were already there, looking smug, as if they had already won. As soon as they sat down, the judge cleared his throat. "We have received a psychiatric report suggesting that Mr. D'Angelo's relationship with his daughter is problematic." Regina tried to speak, but the judge shot her a warning look. Kurt's lawyer immediately stood. "Your Honor, no formal accusations have been made against my client. I have reviewed the report," the judge interrupted, "and I stand by my decision." Kurt inhaled sharply, his blood turning to ice. Lily had found a way to weaponize his love for his daughter. She was painting him as a danger. He glared at her, his hatred burning so intensely that she actually shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Fine. She wanted a war? He'd give her one. Lily's lawyer smirked. "We request that the court formally declare that Mr. D'Angelo's payments have been made with malicious intent." Kurt's lawyer slammed a hand on the table. "This is outrageous. My client has followed every legal requirement. He has never missed a payment. This is a blatant character assassination." The judge hesitated. For the first time, Kurt saw something flicker in his eyes, doubt. And then Lily's lawyer made a critical mistake. He sneered. "Mr. D'Angelo has been paying in loose change, intentionally causing inconvenience and property damage." Kurt's lawyer smirked. "Your Honor, under Section 5.13 of Title 31 of the United States Code, coins and bills are legal tender for all debts. My client has made every required payment." Silence. Lily's lawyer shifted nervously. The judge's composure cracked. And in that moment, Kurt knew. Lily had just lost. The courtroom was thick with tension as the judge frowned, shifting in his seat. "That's true, Your Honor," Kurt's lawyer said smoothly. "But the child support money has been deposited directly into his daughter's account, where she has full access to it for anything she needs." The judge hesitated. "Is that true?" Regina, sitting beside her father, nodded firmly. "Yes, Your Honor. My dad made sure I get my child support directly." Silence stretched across the room. Lily's lawyer fidgeted in his seat. He had expected to steamroll this hearing, but now he was suddenly on the defensive. Kurt's lawyer seized the opportunity. "We also have documented proof of on-time payments for insurance and mortgage, Your Honor." The judge flipped through the paperwork in front of him. His expression shifted as he read the receipts. Across the room, Kurt glanced at Lily. For the first time since the hearing began, she looked nervous. Her fingers gripped the hem of her blazer, her lips pressed into a thin line. Her lawyer leaned in and whispered something to her, his own confidence visibly shaken. Kurt's lawyer adjusted his tie. "Your Honor, my client has complied completely with the divorce ruling. However, he requests that future payments be made via check instead of coins, as handling large amounts of change is inconvenient for him." Before the judge could respond, Kurt's lawyer wasn't finished. "Before we proceed, I'd like to ask a few questions, Your Honor." The judge raised an eyebrow, already irritated by how this was going. "What kind of questions? Are the Chicago Police Department considered part of the legal system here?" The judge hesitated. "Yes, they are." Kurt's lawyer leaned forward. "Then why is it that if my client's car is impounded, he cannot pay the police impound with a check?" He has to use cash or credit card. The judge's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Lily's lawyer shifted uncomfortably, sensing where this was going. Kurt's lawyer pressed on. If the police, who are part of Chicago's legal system, as you just confirmed, won't accept a check, then why should my client be forced to pay spousal support with one? The judge's face reddened. His posture stiffened as he realized he had walked into a trap. He glanced at Lily's lawyer, searching for an escape, but none came. Instead, he leaned forward, defensive. Because this is my courtroom, and I make the rules here. Kurt had had enough. He stood, his voice calm but cutting. No, Your Honor. You're just trying to please my ex-wife's law firm. Were you involved with her too? The entire courtroom gasped. The judge's face turned purple. Mr. D'Angelo, you are in contempt of court, he thundered. 6 months in Cook County Jail unless you apologize and agree to future payments by check. Kurt laughed out loud. Who do you think you are? The king of this messed up court? The judge was so stunned he stumbled over his own words. The bailiff stepped forward, ready to remove Kurt, but he didn't resist. As they grabbed his arm, he locked eyes with Lily. For the first time, she wasn't smiling. Her smug confidence had cracked. Good. Kurt grinned. Good luck getting your dirty money now, which... As he was led out of the courtroom, he saw Lily's lawyer whispering frantically to her. She had just realized something. By throwing him in jail, she had cut herself off from every cent he owed her, and she had no idea how much worse it was going to get. The moment the doors slammed shut behind him, Kurt took a deep breath, rolling his shoulders. Jail didn't scare him. He had expected this, and he had planned for it. The guards processed him, barking orders. He stripped down, changed into the standard jumpsuit, and was led into a cell. It was exactly what he expected, a place where control was an illusion, where men spent their time either watching their backs or planning their next move. As he was escorted to the common area, the guard sneered. Got a mouth on you, huh? One of them said. Judge didn't like that too much. Kurt ignored them. He wasn't afraid of jail. He was 6 feet 4 inches, 255 pounds of solid muscle, a lifetime of construction work, property management, and bad decisions had built him into something unbreakable. And unlike most of the men here, Kurt had already lived through hell before. Juvie, foster homes, a life of scraping by before he built himself into the man he was today. This was just another challenge. The noise, the stares, the unwritten rules, he took it all in as he grabbed a tray in the cafeteria and leaned against the wall, observing. Then he heard it. A voice he hadn't heard in years. Tex? Kurt turned. A man stepped forward, his expression somewhere between shock and amusement. It took a second to register the face, but then it clicked. Randall Turner, otherwise known as Ringer. They had run together as kids, scraping by in the rougher parts of town. They weren't criminals, not really. Just kids with nothing to lose and nowhere to go. Ringer grinned, extending a hand. Damn, man! I never thought I'd see you in here. Kurt set his tray down and pulled him into a quick, firm hug. Ringer, he said with a smirk. Been a long time. Ringer shook his head. What the hell landed you in this mess? Kurt leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. Told the judge to go to hell. Ringer laughed out loud, shaking his head. Yeah, that'll do it. They ate together, ignoring the curious stares from the other inmates. As they finished, Ringer leaned in. All right, Tex, he said. What's your move? Kurt smirked. I knew I might end up here, he admitted. So I started planning weeks ago. Ringer's grin widened. Need any help? Kurt exhaled. Maybe. Not sure yet. But it's good to know I've got someone in here I can trust. Ringer nodded. I'll introduce you to some of the guys. You'll want people watching your back. That night, as Kurt lay on the thin mattress of his cell, he let himself reflect. How had it come to this? His mind drifted to the past, to the childhood he had spent surviving, to the people who had shaped him into the man he became. The streets had been his first education. Juvie had been his first prison. And Lily? Lily had been his biggest mistake. But mistakes could be corrected. And this? This was just the beginning. Lily's life had been a stark contrast to mine from the very beginning. She was raised in Seymour, Indiana, a small town best known for John Cougar Mellencamp, and a main street where everyone knew everyone else's business. Her world was quiet, orderly, predictable. Mine was anything but. I grew up in Southside Chicago, where toughness wasn't an option, it was survival. The streets had been my first education, Juvie my first prison. By the time I turned 20, I had already clawed my way out, using every bit of street smarts to build something better. I bought my first tax-foreclosed house, intending to flip it for a quick profit. Then Lily saw it. She fell in love with the place, and just like that, my plans changed. That house at Oak Forest became our home. Over the next decade, we renovated it together, raised our daughter, hosted backyard BBQs, and lived what I thought was the American dream. But dreams don't last forever. Lily landed a job at a law firm, and everything changed. The simple life wasn't enough for her anymore. She started talking about expensive clothes, jewelry, fine dining. She pushed for nights out at exclusive restaurants, replacing our weekend BBQs with business networking events. But it wasn't just her spending that changed, it was her attitude. She started looking down on Southside Chicagoans, making little jabs, as if she had never come from a small town herself. It was subtle at first. Then it became outright disdain. You know how people from the South Side are, she'd say, flipping her hair. Like she wasn't married to one. We argued. Often. One night, she insisted we move to the North Side, where the better people lived. I resisted, but she wouldn't let it go. 3 years ago, we moved. Regina hated it. She didn't fit in with the rich kids at her school, and she begged to go back to Oak Forest. I wanted to leave too. Lily refused. She had made it, in her mind. And we were going to live her dream, whether we liked it or not. The night I discovered her affair, everything snapped into place. Lily told me she was going out dancing with her friends. Something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me. I tracked her phone. She wasn't at some upscale wine bar with coworkers. She was at a club downtown, packed with sweaty bodies, flashing lights, and overpriced cocktails. I parked down the street and walked inside. It didn't take me long to find her. She was dancing intimately with a man, their bodies pressed together, her arms draped over his shoulders. She laughed as he whispered something in her ear, then tilted her head back for a kiss. I felt a flash of pure rage, but I didn't react. Not yet. Instead, I waited. I watched. At around 9:15, I stepped into the restroom. As I washed my hands, 2 guys walked in. They were laughing, bragging. Joe, you were really getting close with Lily on the dance floor. Thought you were gonna make a move right there. Joe chuckled. Yeah, she's wild. She knows how to talk too, the other guy added. For sure, Joe said. She told me she's going home with me tonight. My stomach turned. Finally, Joe continued, we'll have more time instead of just quickies in the office or my car. Quick relief is okay, but it's nothing like the whole deal, his friend agreed. Tonight's gonna be a long one, Joe bragged. Maybe next weekend it'll be my turn, his friend said with a laugh. They walked out. I stood there, gripping the sink so hard my knuckles turned white. So this was what Lily had turned into. It wasn't just one affair. This was a pattern. When I stepped out, I saw her in Joe's arms, kissing him like she hadn't just texted me half an hour ago saying she was out with friends. At 9:30, she sent me a message. I had too much to drink. I don't feel safe taking the eldest late. I'll just crash at Paula's. Paula, another paralegal from her office. I took a slow breath and responded. That's okay, she replied with a single word. Sorry. Yeah, she was going to be. I watched as she grabbed her purse and left the club, arm in arm with Joe, still giggling like a love-struck teenager. They didn't notice me as they stumbled toward his Lexus, kissing and pawing at each other in the dim light of the parking lot. I followed them. They drove to his place, pulling into an underground garage. That was all I needed to know. I turned my truck around and headed for the mansion. When I got there, I walked straight in and found Regina. We're leaving, I told her. She looked up from her laptop, startled. What? Why? Pack whatever you want, I said. We're not coming back. Her face lit up. Really? Really? She didn't ask about Lily. Not at first. But as we loaded everything we cared about into the truck, she finally said, What about Mom? I threw the last bag onto the passenger seat and slammed the door shut. She's got other guys to take care of her now. Regina didn't argue. She just nodded in understanding. 3 hours later, we were back in Oak Forest, moving into the house that had always felt like home. The next morning, at 11 a.m. sharp, Lily called me. Her voice was tight with panic. Kurt, what's happening? Where are you? Home. A long silence. Then, carefully, she asked, You know, don't you? Yeah, I said. I know. I heard her exhale sharply. Her voice changed, turning desperate. Kurt, just because you don't like the north side, you can't just take our daughter and leave. I laughed coldly. No, Lily. But having a cheating wife is a good reason to leave. Silence. Then she finally snapped. You low-life Southsider. You have no idea what trouble you're in for. My firm will crush you. Maybe, I said. But in the end, I'll come out on top. I hung up. For 6 months, Lily didn't try to fix anything. She didn't apologize. She just prepared for war. Regina started telling me how absent Lily had become, coming home late, making harsh comments about me, urging Regina to marry rich so she wouldn't have to live like her father. But Regina saw through it all. She wanted to stay with me. Now, as I sat in jail, I wondered if Lily was sitting in that empty mansion, thinking she had won. She hadn't, because I was already planning. And when I struck, she wouldn't just lose. She'd lose everything. The bitterness sat like acid in my throat. I wasn't just angry, I was seething. The system had ripped my daughter from me, forced me to fund my ex-wife's luxury lifestyle, and now had the audacity to toss me in jail for speaking the truth. I lay there, tied down to the hospital bed, my body aching from the beating, my mind burning with hate. The nurse standing over me met my glare with calm patience. I'm here to help, not hurt, she said. You're badly injured. I can help you heal, or you can stay in pain. Your choice. Forcing a weak smirk, I exhaled. Yeah, sorry, she nodded, understanding my anger. You're not the first man to land here thinking the world is against him. But if you keep fighting the wrong battles, you'll make it worse. I wasn't interested in wisdom or advice. I was interested in revenge. She left the room briefly, then returned with a tray of food. You need to eat. As she freed my hand and set the tray on my lap, an idea formed in my head. I took a bite of dry eggs, chewed slowly, then glanced up. I need a favor. She raised an eyebrow. I need to see Randall Turner. She hesitated. Turner? Yeah. Ringer, I clarified. Inmate. He's my only real ally in here. She sighed but nodded. I'll see what I can do. By nightfall, my body was screaming in pain, but my mind was racing ahead. Ringer knew what kind of man I was. He knew I didn't let things slide. And now? Now, I was about to make sure every single person who put me in this hospital regretted it. The next morning, Ringer was escorted into the infirmary, looking me over with a low whistle. Oh, crap, he muttered. They messed you up bad. I ignored the pain and got straight to business. There were 6 guys, I said, and 2 guards who set me up. Ringer's face hardened. I continued, my voice low and steady. I need their real names, not just nicknames. Ringer let out a breath, shaking his head. Man, I knew you weren't gonna let this slide. Damn right. His eyes darted toward the guards at the door, making sure they weren't paying attention. I'll see what I can dig up, he said cautiously. But what exactly are you planning? I gave him a dark smirk. An eye for an eye, but with a twist. Ringer let out another sigh, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah, okay. I'll get the names. That's all I need, I assured him. I'll handle the rest. He hesitated, then nodded. I don't even want to know, do I? The less you know, the better. Ringer muttered something under his breath, but he knew me too well to argue. The next night was restless. Strapped to a hospital bed, unable to move comfortably, I stared at the ceiling, playing out every possible move in my head. By morning, Ringer was back. He slipped me a piece of paper folded neatly in his palm. I opened it. 8 names. I nodded, gripping the paper tight. Thanks. Ringer crossed his arms. I should probably ask what's next, but I feel like I already know. I folded the paper and tucked it into my waistband. You don't, I said. Not yet. Oh, crap, he muttered again. Sunday brought an unexpected surprise. Lily and Regina showed up. The second I saw my ex-wife's smug expression, I knew she was here to gloat. She folded her arms as she leaned against the wall, eyeing my bandages. So, I see you're getting along with your fellow scum, she said smoothly. I clenched my jaw. What the hell do you want? Regina insisted we visit. I glanced at my daughter. Her face was torn with worry. Before I could speak, Lily arched an eyebrow. You ready to apologize and be reasonable yet? I laughed coldly. No way in hell. Her smile widened. Then what's this nonsense about you and Regina? You know, you seem unusually attached to her. My hands curled into fists. Are you seriously trying to play that card? Lily tilted her head, fake innocence dripping from her voice. How do I know? She mused. She's so attached to you, it's odd. I saw red. You're disgusting. I spat. She gave me a slow, satisfied smirk. Just so you know, I've offered myself to the guys at my firm, she whispered, leaning in close. And they loved it. I snapped. Get the hell out of here. She laughed, thinking she had one. She had no idea that all she had done was throw gasoline on the fire. She walked out, and Regina rushed in. The second she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. Sweetheart, I murmured. Don't cry. It looks worse than it is. She bit her lip, stepping closer. Can you do something for me? I asked softly. Of course, Dad. Anything. I slipped the folded paper into her hand. Give this to Uncle Ken, I said, and tell him to visit me ASAP. She tucked the list into her bra, nodding quickly. I squeezed her hand. I love you, sweetheart. She threw her arms around me. I love you too, Dad. Lily's voice rang from the hallway. Regina, It's time to leave. She ignored her mother completely as she hugged me one last time. I watched as she walked out, my rage growing deeper by the second. A few days later, Ken showed up. He took one look at me and let out a low whistle. "Damn," he muttered. "You're looking better than last Friday." I smirked. "Glad you waited, huh?" Ken chuckled, then his expression turned serious. He switched to our childhood secret language, the one we had invented as kids. "Gina gave me the list," he said. I started digging. "What exactly do you need?" "Addresses," I said. "Wives, steady girlfriends." Ken hesitated. Then, in English, he muttered, "Oh, crap." I switched back to our secret tongue. "Just get the addresses, then pass them to Gummy." Ken nodded slowly. "I can handle that," he said. "Anything else?" "Yeah. Don't be a stranger," I said. "I could use some familiar faces in here." Later that week, Gummy visited. "Ken passed me the info," he said. "What's the plan?" I smirked. "Did you hear what happened to me?" "Yeah," Gummy said, his expression darkening. "Ken filled me in." "Good." I leaned in. "It's payback time. But keep it clean. No traces." Gummy's lips curled into a knowing grin. "Steely Dan and his cousins," I added. His eyes gleamed. "Oh," he murmured. "This is gonna be fun." Gummy nodded as I finished giving him instructions. He understood the assignment without needing more details. "Coordinate everything same day, same time," I told him. "And make sure they get the message." He smirked. "Which message?" I leaned forward, lowering my voice to a cold whisper. "Tell them, don't mess with Texas." Gummy chuckled darkly. "I'll get some extra hands. You'll hear about it soon." And just like that, the wheels were in motion. It had to be done right, clean, untraceable, and swift. They wouldn't be able to prove it was me, but they'd know. A week passed with no word, which meant everything had gone smoothly. Tuesday morning, I noticed something odd. The usual guards weren't at their posts. That was unusual for a weekday. And one of the 6 guys who had jumped me looked off. He was tense, distracted, glancing at the walls instead of making eye contact. It must have happened yesterday. I let a slow grin creep onto my face. I told Ringer to spread the word. Don't mess with Texas. By lunchtime, inmates were whispering my name. Within days, I had a new reputation inside these walls. They called me Tex now. The 6 who attacked me? They were glaring every time I walked past, but they didn't make a move. Not with Ringer's crew covering my back. Then, one of them cracked. A guy named Vince, one of the 6, stalked toward me in the yard. Before he could say a word, 8 of my guys surrounded him. He stopped short, swallowing hard. "You scum," he hissed, his voice trembling. "My girl dumped me because of you." I grinned. "Don't mess with Texas." Then stiffened. I leaned in, my voice calm and deliberate. "Now your ladies know how it feels," I said. "An eye for an eye, but with a twist." His fists clenched, but he was outnumbered. "You heard me," I continued. "I hurt the ones you love. And tell them this next time. It'll be their mothers." His eyes widened in horror. Then he turned and ran. That was the moment the guards got involved. 2 of them, the same ones who let the attack on me happen, approached me later that day. They weren't subtle. "Who the hell do you think you are?" one spat. "You think you run this place?" I smirked. "Nope. But I think your wives better get ready for a rough ride. Might even enjoy it." His face twisted with rage. Before I could brace myself, the first punch landed hard against my ribs. I didn't flinch. Another hit to my jaw. Then another to my stomach. I let it happen. No resistance. No reaction. Finally, another guard intervened, dragging him off me. "You're done," the second guard muttered. I grinned, spitting blood onto the floor. "Nah, I'm just getting started." Half the inmates had witnessed the assault. The cameras caught it, too. By the time I was dragged back to the infirmary, the story was already circulating. Beth, the nurse from last time, crossed her arms as she looked me over. "So we've got a troublemaker, huh?" she said, shaking her head. I grunted, adjusting my swollen jaw. "I didn't throw a single punch. Guard just attacked me." She nodded, already expecting this answer. "Well, there's going to be an investigation this time. Too many witnesses. He'll probably lose his job over it. One less scumbag in uniform," I muttered. She arched an eyebrow. "You do realize that guards are here to keep you safe, right?" I laughed bitterly. "Yeah. Well, that one let me get jumped the first time I landed here. He's not here to protect me. He's here to keep guys like me in line." Beth didn't argue. She just bandaged me up, sighing. "You'll have to stay overnight for observation." I narrowed my eyes. "You really worry about my health, or you just like checking out my busted-up face?" She rolled her eyes. "Shut up and lie back." By morning, the guard was suspended. The other one didn't dare lay a hand on me. I'd made my point. 3 weeks passed. No visit from Regina. No updates. Then Ken showed up. I could already tell by his tight expression that the news wasn't good. "Lily's refusing to bring Gina," he said flatly. I felt a slow rage boiling inside me. "That bitch," I muttered. "She's keeping my daughter from me?" Ken nodded grimly. "She's pissed, man. Losing control over Gina is driving her nuts." I exhaled sharply. This isn't over. At the end of the month, Lily finally showed up, and she almost left Regina in the car. But Gina? She refused to budge. I could hear yelling and screaming from the parking lot before they even walked in. Lily stormed through the doors, already fuming. "Your daughter is impossible," she snapped. "She hardly talks to me anymore. She's just as stubborn as you." I smirked. "Funny. You said the same thing last time." Lily crossed her arms. "Why don't you just convince the judge to give you custody? You want her so badly? Take her." I leaned forward, voice icy cold. "Gladly. But you won't let that happen, will you?" She scoffed, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "She needs to be in a good school to succeed." I exhaled sharply. Oak Forest is a good school. She liked it there. "It's nothing compared to Wilmette," she countered. "She's getting a top-notch education. She's getting a manufactured future built on fake friendships and rich kid politics." Lily's eyes narrowed. "You're just too stubborn to see the benefits," she hissed. I chuckled. "We've had this argument 1,000 times. You're not going to change my mind. And I won't change yours. So why are you even here?" Lily tapped her manicured nails against the table. "I need my spousal support payment." I grinned. "Well, you'll have to manage with your own paycheck." Her smile vanished. "What do you mean?" she demanded. I leaned back, stretching my arms. "I can't receive checks from my S-Corp while I'm in jail," I said lazily. "And no work means no pay. That's how it works in the real world." Her face paled. "I can't cover all the bills with my salary alone." I shrugged. "Well, maybe you should have thought about that before dragging me back to court." Her jaw clenched. "You were being difficult, paying in coins. And now," I interrupted, "you get nothing because I'm in jail." Her nostrils flared. "But you have to pay." I smirked. "No, I don't." Her hands trembled. "What am I supposed to do about the bills?" I leaned forward, eyes dark. "Figure it out." I looked at Lily, taking in her furious expression, the barely contained rage twisting her perfect features. "Why don't you get one of your lawyer buddies to foot the bills?" I said, leaning back with a smirk. "I'm sure you're worth it." Her nostrils flared, her hands clenching into fists, but she didn't have a comeback. Instead, she stormed out of the room, heels clicking furiously against the floor, leaving behind an atmosphere so thick with anger you could choke on it. A few seconds later, Regina walked in, and I let out a slow breath, relieved to see her. "You really got her mad," she said, sitting down with a grin. I chuckled. She actually thought I'd keep paying her spousal support while I'm locked up. "Good luck with that," Regina scoffed. I studied her for a moment. "How are you holding up?" "Don't worry about me, Dad. I'll be okay." "Still avoiding talking to your mom?" "Yeah," she sighed. "Just when I have to." I nodded slowly. "Smart choice." She hesitated. "So when do you think you'll be out of here?" I sighed, rubbing the back of my neck. "Honey, I won't apologize to that jerk of a judge. The only way I'd say sorry is if he gave you back to me, but I don't see that happening anytime soon." Regina's expression fell. "I get it," she said quietly, "but my birthday's next month. I'd love for you to be out so we could celebrate." That hit me hard. For the first time, I wondered if maybe I was being too stubborn. Maybe my pride was keeping me locked away when I should be out there with my daughter. Then Gina did something unexpected. She dropped wisdom on me. "If a person doesn't have principles, then he has nothing," she said. "Like Abraham Lincoln once said, important principles may and must be inflexible." I blinked. "Where'd you hear that?" "My counselor, Dr. Hadge," she said. "School arranged it when some teachers noticed my grades were slipping. It's helped to talk to someone." I exhaled slowly. "Figures a fancy school like Wilmette would have a PhD counselor on staff." "Yeah, the rich kids can't just talk to regular school counselors." She smirked. I laughed. Then I turned serious. "Looks like your mom's not too happy with you either." "She's getting pretty annoyed," Gina admitted. "I just brush it off. Seems to make her even angrier. But I'm not bothered." I grinned. "That's my girl. In a couple more months, though," I continued, "she's gonna have bigger problems. The bank won't wait forever for her jumbo loan payment. That mansion? It'll be foreclosed in 3 months tops." Gina frowned. "But won't that mess up your credit?" I chuckled. "Honey, when you pay for everything in cash, you don't care about credit. That dumb mansion was the only thing I ever borrowed money for." Her eyes widened. "Really? Even with all your businesses and rental properties?" "Never needed a loan," I told her. "I used cash flow from the other properties to buy new ones." Regina looked at me with genuine admiration. "Dad, I've always looked up to you, but now, even more." "Thanks, honey," I said, smiling. "You sure know how to lift my spirits." Seeing her felt amazing, but at the same time, it made me realize just how much time we were losing. Missing her birthday would be hard on both of us. But she was strong. Stronger than I ever imagined. A week later, news reached me that the guard who beat me was fired. The video footage made it impossible to defend him. The other guard disappeared too. Maybe transferred, maybe quit. I didn't care. Either way, he was gone. A few inmates thanked me for getting rid of the bad guards. It earned me more respect inside, and even the 6 idiots who jumped me were keeping their distance now. I heard that one of their wives had filed for divorce, and 3 others got dumped by their girlfriends. Maybe, just maybe, some people can learn. Or maybe they just realized how badly they messed up. 2 weeks later, I was summoned to meet with the judge via video. The guard escorting me didn't explain why, just that I was expected. I refused to go without my lawyer. "If the judge wants a meeting," I told him. He can reschedule until my lawyer is available. The guard's jaw tightened, but he left without arguing. 3 days later, I got an official summons, this time with my lawyer included. When we met before the hearing, my lawyer was uneasy. I haven't received any details on why this meeting was requested, he said. That struck me as odd. Then we proceed cautiously, I told him. When the judge appeared on the screen, he looked frustrated. I wasn't bothered. To me, he was just another arrogant judge who thought he was above everyone else. My lawyer didn't waste time. Your Honor, could you clarify the purpose of this meeting? We received no prior information, just an instruction to attend. The judge waved a dismissive hand. You didn't need to involve your lawyer, he said. I simply wanted to see if you were ready to apologize for your behavior in court. I laughed out loud. I couldn't help it. He really thought I'd crawl back and beg for his mercy? I glanced at my lawyer, giving him a quick signal. Without missing a beat, my lawyer leaned forward. Your Honor, my client has served his time without issue. If you are offering an early release, we are open to discussing reasonable terms. The judge frowned. I am not offering early release, he said flatly. My lawyer nodded. Then there is nothing to discuss. My client will serve his time. The judge's eyes narrowed. So you're not ready to apologize? I leaned forward, meeting his cold gaze. Let me be very clear, I said. The only way I apologize is if you reverse your ruling and give me custody of my daughter. Otherwise? I smirked. You're wasting both our time. The judge's jaw tightened. His face burned red, but he didn't respond immediately. He wasn't used to men like me standing up to him. The silence stretched. Then, in a clipped voice, he said, Very well. Meeting adjourned. The screen cut out, and I leaned back in my chair, stretching my arms. My lawyer gave me an amused look. Well, that went well. I grinned. Didn't it? I leaned in toward my lawyer and whispered, Tell him I refuse to apologize. In fact, I want an apology from him. My lawyer didn't even blink. He turned back to the judge, his voice calm and professional. Your Honor, my client refuses to apologize. Instead, he requests an apology from you for the unfair treatment he has received. Additionally, he seeks primary custody of his child. The judge's eyebrows shot up, his face twisting in disbelief. How dare you demand an apology from me? He sputtered. I sat back, arms crossed, waiting for the tantrum to begin. I stand by my decision regarding the child. The judge continued, his voice tight with irritation. And I owe you no apology. My lawyer simply nodded, already expecting this response. In that case, Your Honor, this meeting has been a waste of time. If my client changes his mind in the future, we will request another hearing. Good day, sir. I stood, ready to leave, but the judge suddenly spoke again. One more thing. I paused, waiting. Now, we were about to hear the real reason for this meeting. Your client is failing to meet the divorce settlement terms, the judge said. When will he resume paying spousal support and the mortgage? I leaned toward my lawyer again, whispering my response. Without hesitation, my lawyer replied, My client does not plan to make any payments while he is incarcerated. The judge stiffened. But the house is going into foreclosure. I smirked, finally speaking for myself. That's my wife's mansion, not mine. I never wanted it. You'll ruin your credit and lose all your equity, the judge warned, as if he actually cared about my finances. I shrugged. I'm willing to take that hit if it means watching my ex-wife end up where she belongs. His jaw clenched, but before he could react, I twisted the knife deeper. Maybe her lovers can foot the bill, I said with a smirk. With a dozen of them, they should be able to scrape something together. That set him off. His face turned bright red, his hands clenched into fists. "You worthless Southside scum," he hissed. "Who the hell do you think you're talking to?" Before he could unleash more, I cut him off coldly. "I'm addressing someone who's clearly got personal interests in my wife's finances," I said. "If I'm mistaken, I apologize. But tell me, why is a judge so invested in my ex-wife's mortgage?" His nostrils flared, but I didn't wait for an answer. I stood up and walked toward the door. "Your client just earned himself an extra 2 months in jail," the judge shouted behind me. "If he keeps disrespecting me, I'll make his life a living hell." I grinned as I waited for the guard to take me back to my cell. The guard looked at me with wide eyes, as if he had just watched a man throw himself in front of a train. Back in my cell, I was buzzing with energy. I had just confirmed what I suspected. Lily had mentioned the mortgage to her lovers, and one of them had run to the judge. Their world was about to crumble. The following Sunday, Lily couldn't resist visiting me. Unfortunately for her, Regina got wind of it and insisted on coming along. Lily's heels clicked against the concrete floor as she entered, her arms crossed and a smug look on her face. "So you managed to piss off the judge again and score 2 more months?" she mocked. "When will you learn that you can't beat the system?" I smirked, leaning back in my chair. "Lily," I sighed, "why don't you just stop talking to me? Your Northside attitude isn't helping. Just make sure Gina visits regularly. That's all I care about." Her eyes flashed with irritation. "It's Regina," she snapped. I turned away, ignoring her completely. She huffed, muttering insults under her breath, but after a few minutes of being ignored, she finally stormed out. Then Gina walked in. The moment I saw her smile, my whole world felt lighter. "You're in a good mood," I said. "Because I get to see my dad?" She grinned. I laughed. "That can't be the only reason." She bit her lip, looking mischievous. "Well, I do have a surprise for you," she admitted, "but I can't reveal it yet." I raised an eyebrow. "That sounds suspicious. Dad, do you trust me?" "With my life." Then she pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Will you sign this without reading it?" I narrowed my eyes. "Gina, what the hell is this?" "You'll have to wait and see," she said, grinning like a little mastermind. "You trust me, right?" I sighed, shaking my head, then took the pen and signed the document blind. Gina had folded it perfectly, hiding everything except the signature line. As soon as I handed it back, she tucked it away safely. "Mom said something about you getting 2 more months added to your jail time," she said. "Is that true?" "Yeah," I admitted. "Sorry about that, honey." She frowned. "What happened?" I shrugged. "Had another disagreement with the judge." She rolled her eyes. "Well, whatever you did, he probably deserved it." We talked more about school, her counselor Dr. Alex Hodges, and how things were going with her mom. I tried to pry the surprise out of her, but she refused to tell me. Before she left, I sighed. "Well, I won't be there for your sweet 16, but I'll have a birthday present ready when you visit next." Her eyes lit up. "What is it?" I smirked. "That's a surprise." "Looks like we both have surprises, huh?" She laughed, leaning in to hug me. Before she walked out, I had one last request. "Can you arrange for Greg to visit me?" Greg was my right-hand man, the one handling all my business matters while I was locked up. "Sure thing, Dad," she said. Later that week, Greg visited. He had taken care of most of the tasks I assigned him. Then, I briefed him on Gina's birthday surprise. He stared at me. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah, it's the perfect gift for her." He exhaled. "All right, I'll talk to our lawyer." Then, as he stood up to leave, I added, And one more thing dropped by my brother. Greg paused, then nodded. Got it. And just like that, everything was falling into place. Stop by Ken's place and give him everything you've got. I told Greg before he left. He'll know what to do. If he has any questions, tell him to come see me. If not, tell him to get in touch with Gummy. Greg nodded. Got it. As he walked away, I couldn't help but smile. Gummy was handling the revenge, and I'd stay innocent, locked away with a perfect alibi. By the end of the month, my status inside had skyrocketed. Word had spread. The guards whispered about me, the inmates respected me, and even the guys who once wanted me dead now kept their distance. They all knew. Don't mess with Texas. That nickname had stuck. It wasn't just a name anymore. It was a warning. Then came the surprise visit. I walked into the visitation room and froze when I saw Lily sitting there. For a brief second, I almost turned around and walked out. But then she spoke. Kurt, please stay. I need to talk to you. I crossed my arms. I've got nothing to say to you, Lily. She swallowed hard, her voice thick with desperation. We're about to lose the house. Please, you have to give me some money to stop the foreclosure. I almost laughed. Lily, that house is yours. I never wanted it. But you kept insisting until I gave in. It means nothing to me. She clenched her fists. But we have no equity in it. The market is down, and the bank is taking it. Let them. My voice was cold. Final. She stared at me, her lips trembling. You can't do that, Kurt. You have to help me. I let out a slow breath, enjoying the moment. Go ask your friends for help, I said. I'm sure they've got enough money. Then you can finally be the person you really are. Her face crumpled, her mask of control shattering. Why are you doing this to me? She whispered. I leaned forward, my voice deadly calm. Why did you lie to the judge and accuse me of molesting our daughter? Her breath hitched. She froze, caught off guard. For the first time, she had nothing to say. Tears filled her eyes. Her shoulders shook. But I didn't care. I stood up and walked out. And for the first time in years, I felt free. As I headed back to my cell, the guard got a call. Turn around, he grumbled. You're going back. I smirked. Lily begging again? But when I walked back in, I saw Regina instead. I exhaled in relief. Gina! Your mom didn't tell me she was bringing you. I wouldn't let her come alone, she said. I sat down. I'm sorry I missed your birthday, sweetheart. She shook her head. Dad, I knew you wouldn't be there. And it's okay. I still love you, and you don't have to give me anything. My chest tightened. I reached across the table, taking her hand. Well, I don't have it with me, I admitted. But I can tell you what it is. She perked up. Gina, the Oak Forest home is yours. Her eyes widened. I'm putting it into a trust until you turn 18. When I get out, I'll pay you rent. A huge smile spread across her face. Really? Of course, I said. She threw her arms around me, squeezing tight. You're the best, Dad. A few days later, Gummy visited. He sat across from me, his grin already in place. Everything is set, he said. Footage of Lily, other paralegals, and politicians doing illegal things, recorded and compiled. We had hidden cameras installed by cleaners. People paid very well to do their job quietly. By next week, my brother Ken would leak everything anonymously. And every news outlet and tabloid would explode. The tagline? Don't mess with Texas. Gummy chuckled. This is gonna be fun. I smirked. Next week. Spread the word. Got it. Walking back to my cell, I grinned again. Ringer saw and immediately knew. He muttered, "Oh." I just nodded, my grin widening. The night the videos dropped, I was in my bunk when I heard the buzz start. Whispers turned into murmurs. Murmurs turned into laughter. Then, the phrase started spreading. "Don't mess with Texas." Even the big guy, one of the 6 who jumped me, came to my cell. He stood awkwardly, his hands clenched, before finally speaking. I wanted to apologize." I studied him. "I warned you not to mess with me. Now others regret it." He nodded stiffly. "Yeah, I got that." I let a cold smile form. "I match kindness with kindness," I said, "and violence with violence." His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. "Understood." "Good." He left without another word. 3 days later, I was summoned again. My lawyer walked in, looking way too amused. "Wonder what this is about?" he asked, smirking. I grinned. "Time will tell." When the judge appeared on the screen, he was furious. "You did this," he shouted. I tilted my head. "What are you talking about? You're TX, aren't you?" I shrugged. "I've been called that. You'll pay for this," he bellowed. I gave him a bored look. "I've been locked up for 4 months," I said. "How could I have done anything?" "You have friends," the judge spat. "We all have friends, Your Honor." I smirked. His face turned redder. "Call off your dogs," he demanded. I chuckled. "Now you're calling my friends dogs?" I said, feigning disappointment. "They might not like that. And you know what happens when you corner a dog, right?" His eyes darkened. "Are you threatening me?" I leaned back. "No. Just stating an old saying." His voice dropped dangerously low. "Watch your back when you get out," he hissed. "You'll answer to people who don't care about you. And I'll be happy with whatever happens to you." The screen cut off. I turned to my lawyer. He held up his phone, playing back the recorded audio. "The Bar Association will love this," he said with a grin. I laughed. The judge had just signed his own death warrant. I sat there, arms crossed, watching Lily fall apart in front of me. I had nothing left to say. "You bastard," she suddenly screamed, her voice cracking with rage. I lifted an eyebrow. "Something wrong?" I asked calmly. "You got me fired," she snapped. "My face is everywhere because of you. How could you?" I let out a slow breath, playing it cool. "You did it, not me," I countered. Her hands clenched into fists. "Do you hate me that much?" she demanded. I smirked, leaning forward. "Yeah," I said smoothly. "And all your lawyer buddies who think they're above everyone else." Her face fell. "You used to be a nice, small-town girl with a great personality," I continued. "Now, you're just a selfish city snob who destroyed everything good in her life." Her lip trembled, but she tried to keep her voice firm. "What do I do now?" she whispered. "No job, and nobody wants to hire me." I tilted my head, pretending to think. "Maybe move back home?" I suggested. "Find a small-town job. Settle down. Maybe even apologize for the mess you made." She let out a bitter laugh. "I can't. The local papers are calling me the center of a Chicago scandal. My parents are retiring early and moving to Florida just to avoid the gossip." I gave her a mock sympathetic look. "Florida might suit you," I mused. "It's far away from me." She exhaled sharply, shaking her head. "They don't want me either," she admitted. "They barely talk to me anymore." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "Maybe that's your fault, Lily," I said. "If both your parents and your daughter don't want to be around you, maybe you should take a long, hard look at yourself." Her eyes welled up, but I didn't stop. "You should move on and start fresh. Just don't take Gina with you. Once I'm out, I'll fight for custody. With your reputation, they'll have a hard time believing you're a moral example." She snapped her head up. "You can't do that," she hissed. "She's all I have." I shrugged. "I don't care." My voice was ice cold. "You did this to yourself. We had a good life, and you threw it away. Maybe now you can go back to being a companion for one of your lawyer buddies. You're almost 40, but hey, there might still be a market." Her breath hitched. Her head dropped onto the table, and she sobbed. I felt nothing. "Tough luck," I muttered. "Did you bring Gina?" I asked, ready to be done with this. She glared at me, wiping her tears. "It's Regina," she snapped. "And no, she's with her doctor friend." I exhaled slowly. Then there's nothing left to talk about. I stood up, walking toward the door. "Don't bother coming back unless you bring Regina." I didn't feel smug this time. I just felt sorry for her. She was shattered. And the best part? She had done it to herself. A fire and a crash. The next day, I was watching the news when something caught my attention. A fire had broken out downtown, on the top floor of a major office building. The upper floors were destroyed, but the lower floors were saved by sprinklers. I couldn't help but smile. The next day, Ken visited. "The law firm's off-site server crashed," he said casually. "They lost everything." I just grinned. Things were falling apart for Lily and her friends. And nobody knew who was behind it. The best surprise yet. 2 weeks later, Gina finally visited. She was beaming, her eyes brighter than ever. She looked free. "Gina," I greeted her. "You seem so happy. What's up?" She grinned. "I finally finished your surprise. You'll never guess." I smirked. "Well, from our last chat, it sounds like it involves the Oak Forest house. Did you and your mom move back there?" "Close," she replied cryptically. I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Mom's getting kicked out of the Wilmette house." I leaned forward. "And?" "I'm moving to Oak Forest." I blinked. "How's that possible?" "The court gave your mom custody until you're 18. Gina beamed. "That's the surprise. I got emancipated." I stared at her. With the house in trust for me, it was easy. I needed a safe place, and our old neighborhood is perfect. I finally let out a laugh, shaking my head. "You outsmarted her," I said. She grinned. "Once you're out, we can go back home together. You excited to return to high school in Oak Forest?" I already caught up with old friends. They're eager for school to start. I smiled. "I'm proud of you, Gina." She bit her lip. "Mom mentioned you spending time with my counselor. I'd like you to meet Alex." I frowned. "Who's Alex?" "You're in luck." She smirked. "Alex brought me here today." My stomach tightened. A man was driving my daughter around Chicago? I had to tread carefully. I needed to set boundaries, without pushing Gina away. She excused herself, leaving the room. When she returned, she wasn't alone. A stunning woman followed her. She had a confident smile, dark eyes sharp and knowing. I froze. "Freddie!" Her lips curved into a smirk. "Haven't heard that name in 20 years. I chuckled, shaking my head. "Freddie or Alexandria Frederico, which one do you go by now?" She smiled. "Dr. Alex Hodges." I turned to Gina, who looked puzzled. "Dad, how do you know Dr. Hodges?" I exhaled. "Freddie and I were neighbors growing up. We didn't hang out much. You were a troublemaker back then," Freddie teased. "Seems not much has changed." I flushed slightly. "Some things never change." "That makes sense," she nodded. "Should I start calling you Tex?" Gina perked up. "Why Tex?" Freddie smirked. It was his nickname growing up. He wasn't one to let things slide. She shot me a knowing glance. Your mom's done him wrong, and I bet he's behind the law for mess. I grinned. I plead the fifth. Freddie laughed. Before we continued, she met my gaze. I hope you don't mind me spending time with Regina. It's Gina, my daughter corrected. Oops. My bad. For the first time in years, I felt like something was finally going right. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. You must have turned things around to have a place in Wilmette, Freddie observed, leaning back in her chair. It's just a house, not a home, I clarified. Gina jumped in. Our real home is in Oak Forest. Freddie smirked. South Side, but better than where we grew up. I nodded. Yeah. Wish we'd stayed there. Maybe things would have been different. It was true. If Lily had just been satisfied with what we had, we might still be together. But she wasn't, and here we were. After some small talk, I turned to Freddie, feeling a rare moment of gratitude. Thanks for helping Gina. No problem, Texas. She grinned. She's like family now. I nodded. I appreciate it. Hey, she added, leaning forward slightly. When you get out, let's grab dinner. I let out a half laugh, shaking my head. I'll make sure of it if I ever get out. The next 2 weeks passed with no changes, just the same jail routine. Sundays were better because Gina and Freddie visited. Freddie really looked after Gina, helping her decorate the Oak Forest house, buying furniture, and making sure she felt at home. When I asked about the money, Gina reassured me. Uncle Ken's been helping out, she said. And I have my own savings, remember? I exhaled. Yeah. I just didn't want Freddie footing the bill. Gina laughed. She's been great, but no, she hasn't paid for anything. I nodded. Good. I just don't want you feeling indebted to anyone. She smirked. Don't worry, your man cave is untouched. I chuckled. Good. Living with 2 females was hard enough the first time. But after they left, I found myself thinking about Gina's future. She was legally an adult now. In a few years, she'd be off to college, and I'd be on my own. That Monday, I was summoned for a visit. When I walked into the room and saw Lily, I almost turned around. Wait! We need to talk, she pleaded. I sighed, rubbing my forehead. What now? Do you know what our daughter did? I frowned. What are you talking about? She got emancipated. She's moved out, and I don't know where she is. I let out a dry laugh. Oh, that! Lily's eyes narrowed. So you knew? Did you push her into it? I leaned back. No. She did it herself, with her school counselor's help. Where is she? Lily demanded. Back on the south side, I answered plainly. Her face twisted. What about school? She's going back to Oak Forest in the fall, I said. Lily's jaw tightened. She hated Wilmette, didn't she? I nodded. She was always belittled there for being from the projects. You took her from a school where she was happy and put her in a situation that damaged her self-esteem. You did more harm than good moving her there. Lily clenched her fists. I was trying to ensure she got a good education. Kids learn from their parents' example more than from a classroom. I shot back. What do you think your example taught her? She opened her mouth, but I kept going. I hope it showed her what not to do. Our job was to raise a responsible adult, and despite our failures, I hope we did. Lily's face softened slightly. It wasn't all bad. No, I admitted. But it ended that way. I hope you find what you're looking for. Clearly, I wasn't it. For the first time, I saw genuine regret in her eyes. I left the table without another word. Finally, the day came. I was summoned to court for my release hearing. Gina, Freddie, and Lily were all there, sitting quietly. I watched the judge enter. It wasn't the same one. Maybe the other had lost his job. The judge reviewed my file and addressed me. "Mr. D'Angelo, what do you have to say for yourself?" I kept my voice steady. "I've served my initial 6 months, plus an extra 2, I said. The judge sighed. "You could have apologized and been freed." I lifted my chin. I didn't feel the other judge deserved an apology. So I finished my sentence. The judge gave me a long look. "You're stubborn, Mr. D'Angelo." I smirked. "I prefer strong-willed. It's helped me in business and life." The judge shook his head. "Your divorce settlement still stands, and you'll need to pay restitution for the time unpaid." My lawyer spoke up. "Your Honor, my client is willing to pay what he owes. Our calculations show the amount is just under $20,000. Today, he will pay her the full amount, understanding that this settles all financial obligations." Lily shot up from her seat. "What? You owe me more than that. You're supposed to keep paying until Regina turns 18. The judge's eyes darkened. "Miss, I will handle all matters in my courtroom." Lily sat down, seething. The judge turned to my lawyer. "Explain your calculations." My lawyer spoke confidently. "My client paid the initial spousal support, mortgage, and insurance. He also supported his daughter financially while in jail. He couldn't work while incarcerated, so payments stopped. Now that he's free, he can start earning again." The judge reviewed the facts. "Your client was incarcerated for 8 months. He mused. "Just spousal support would be $16,000, not to mention the mortgage." My lawyer smiled. "Your Honor, the court order stated until the minor child becomes a legal adult. The child in question has been emancipated for the last 3 months. Lily's eyes widened. "Additionally, the house was foreclosed upon 3 months ago. No mortgage payments could be made on a non-existent loan." The judge looked at the documents. He couldn't dispute the facts. "The total owed is $1,782. My lawyer grinned. "He'll pay $20,000 today, and all ties are severed." The judge nodded. "That seems fair." Lily's face paled. For the first time, she realized she had lost everything. "I'll need to do further research on this. If what you presented is accurate, then I'll accept this amount." The judge then addressed both Lily and me. "You share a child. Despite her legal status, she's still a teenager with needs. You both need to be civil for her sake. And Mr. D'Angelo, you should extend that civility to others involved in your divorce. Can I get your word on that?" "Yes, Your Honor." I acknowledged. "Mrs. D'Angelo?" "Yes, Your Honor." Lily replied. "And Regina?" He turned to Gina in the gallery. "It's Gina." "But yes, Your Honor." She clarified. "Then unless these figures prove false, I'll close this case. Mr. D'Angelo, you're free to go." "Thank you, Your Honor." My lawyer expressed as we left. The moment we stepped out, Gina rushed over and hugged me tightly while Freddie stood nearby, smiling. From the corner of my eye, I caught Lily glaring at us. She then approached me, her face a mix of outrage and disbelief. $20,000? That's it? That's unfair, she exclaimed. "You chose your new partners over me. They can support you now." I responded calmly. "You can't do this to me," she protested. "Lily, let's be civil for Gina's sake," I urged. "It's Regina," she snapped. "Our daughter," I reiterated, refusing to be baited. "What am I supposed to do?" "I have nothing," she lamented. "You'll find another job. And I can help with housing. I have a rental. You can stay there rent-free for 6 months." I offered. "Move back to the south side?" she whined. "It's free, Lily. Can't argue with that, I reasoned. Oh, she sighed in frustration. Turning to Gina and Freddie, I asked, ready to go? Absolutely. They both chimed. Freddie, I owe you dinner. I remembered. I think so too. She agreed. Let's head to RPM Italian. I made a reservation after getting release confirmation. I need to erase the taste of jail food, I suggested. From the corner of my eye, I saw Lily's fury flare. RPM Italian had been our spot for special occasions. I booked the table for 6:30, so we've got some time. Mind if we take a drive? I just want to feel the freedom, I suggested. Then, turning to Freddie, I added, I reserved for 4. Can you check if your husband can join us? She fell silent, her expression blank. Then Gina spoke up. Dad, she doesn't have a husband anymore. I never told you. I frowned, confused. Freddie had always worn wedding rings whenever we talked. Even now, she still had them on. I'm sorry, Freddie. I didn't mean to upset you. I apologized. It's okay. You didn't know. My husband died in a car accident on the Eisenhower about 5 years ago. A big rig forced him into the divider. They said he died instantly. Freddie revealed. I'm deeply sorry, Freddie. I had no idea. I assumed because you wore rings that you were married. I expressed regret. Yeah. I just can't bring myself to take them off yet. Feels like letting him go. I know, a psychologist with a mental issue. I've heard it before. Freddie responded with a bittersweet smile. Well, I'm sorry. Will you still join us so I can make it up to you? I asked. She looked solemn but nodded. I think that'll be okay. I realized then that I had been too caught up in my own troubles and revenge to ask about her life. I felt awful. From now on, I resolved to be more open, to listen, to be a better friend. Dinner was fantastic. It was a relief to wear regular clothes, to not constantly watch my back. But being free felt strange after 8 months. By the end of the meal, I felt more at ease. Freddie, Alexandria, whenever you're ready, would you let me take you out on a proper date? I'll wait however long it takes. Can we keep in touch until then? I asked. Dad, we're definitely keeping in touch. She's not getting rid of me that easily. Gina reassured me. And I wouldn't want it any other way, Freddie replied, smiling at Gina before turning to me. Then she added, Mike and I never had kids. With my studies and his business, the timing was never right. Having Gina as a sort of daughter has been therapeutic for me. I hope that's okay with you. After everything you've done for us, I wouldn't want it any other way, I assured her. As we left the restaurant, Gina mentioned, Hope you like how our old house looks. Anything's better than where I've been the past 8 months. I joked. When we arrived, I was surprised. The shutters were painted, the bushes trimmed. It looked great. Inside, it felt more like a home than ever. I could sense Freddie's influence. Cheesy as it sounds, tears welled up in my eyes. This hardened ex-con, this man who had spent years burying his emotions, felt something stir deep inside him. Kurt? Freddie called out softly. I wiped my eyes and admitted, I feel like I'm home. Kurt, she said again. I turned to her, puzzled. She removed her rings, smiling at me. Unable to resist, I smiled back. And we hugged. 10 lawyers, 4 paralegals, 6 politicians, and a judge saw their careers and marriages destroyed because of the events surrounding my divorce and its aftermath. Whether seen as stubborn or strong-willed, sometimes sticking to your principles pays off. On a positive note, Gina gained a new mother, as well as a younger brother and sister, twins named Frederick and Alexis. I found it fitting to name them after the person who had helped me start anew. As for Lily, she married a wealthy lawyer, perhaps finally achieving what she had always desired. While I believe we had everything, a loving family, a nice home in a good neighborhood, a healthy child, and a successful business that alleviated financial concerns, she had craved status above all else. Now she has that status, married to a rich lawyer, residing in a large house in Winnetka. However, she also has a husband who is a disrespectful womanizer, using her for appearances rather than genuine affection. I hope she's content. I know I am.